after a season's over to say, here's the good owners, here's the bad owners, because it holds billionaires accountable. And there's some bad owners. There's about 7 great quarterbacks in this league, 7 great coaches, 7 great GMs, and 7 great owners. There's a lot of bad ones. So the Steeler report card came out, and I've never been on the Steeler plane, but apparently it's only got one engine because they got Fs across the board. They got F on team travel and F on treatment of families and F on locker room. How can you have an F on a locker room? Team travel. I mean, what are you giving people, cold hot dogs for lunch? Like, I don't even know how you get that grade. So, but I think this stuff's, they didn't get Fs across the board. They got some, Bs in the training staff got a B+, the weight room got a B, the nutritionist, the dietitian got a B. There was a couple A's in there. Special teams coordinator, everybody liked. But ownership got a D- and Fs everywhere. And I think it's important. The Rooneys have always had a reputation as good people, but cheap. And, it used to be the Steelers were up here and the Bengals were down there, and now they're contemporaries. So I don't know how team travel can be an F. Are they taking like a biplane? I don't even know. Is it an open cockpit? I don't even understand that. How can you butcher team travel? Yeah. But
yeah, this whole situation brings me back to a few years ago when the first wave of these team report cards came out. I distinctly remember the Kansas City Chiefs weren't ranked particularly high, and I recall Colin Cowherd's response to it. He went on one of his classic rants and basically said, "Does any of this matter? It's about winning." He started listing the teams that were ranked at the top, like the Miami Dolphins. And his point was, okay, the Dolphins have a great facility grade. What have they actually won? Meanwhile, a franchise like the Chiefs, which was near the bottom of the rankings, was busy winning Super Bowls. I remember that take very clearly. I'm not even sure if I was making videos back then. I probably wasn't. I think I was just casually watching on my couch like a regular fan. I haven't watched those kinds of sports shows in a long time, but that specific moment stuck with me. It's interesting to revisit that now because, if I'm not mistaken, the Miami Dolphins were either at the top or near the top of these rankings again this past season. And the question remains, what have they actually accomplished? Nothing of consequence. But here's the thing. I'm not necessarily in that same camp. I don't think winning should excuse poor treatment of players and their families. If I were an owner, I would be approaching this from a completely different angle. I would be treating my players like absolute royalty. The treatment of families, in particular, would be a massive priority for me. That's one of the most important categories in my book. Think about it. You have position coaches, you have the food and dining areas, the training facilities, the weight room. I am a huge believer in health and nutrition. I would want my guys to have access to the most pristine, highest quality food imaginable. I would want the training facilities to be state-of-the-art. I'm a firm believer that these things directly impact performance and morale. But the family aspect is different. That's about treating adults, human beings, with basic dignity and respect. From my perspective, that's essentially free. I know there are some costs associated with amenities for families, but it's not like they're asking for lobster dinners and daily massages. They're asking to feel welcomed, valued, and supported. That should be an automatic A+ for every single franchise. The same goes for team travel. When you have to travel for a game, you want your players to feel comfortable and prepared. You don't want them dragging themselves off a cramped, outdated plane, feeling exhausted before they even get to the hotel. Now, Colin's recent commentary has been focused on the Pittsburgh Steelers, and I find it interesting that he's singling them out. I haven't been to a football game in Pittsburgh in quite a while, so I can't speak to the current state of the stadium. But when I did go to games there, it already felt old. Everything had a faded quality to it. You just had this sense that you were in an aging facility. If it feels that way from the stands, there's a good reason to believe that same atmosphere permeates the rest of the building, the locker rooms, the training areas, the whole operation. So, the Steelers' low grades in this report card aren't necessarily a surprise to me. But let's look at the actual grades. An F in the locker room, a C in the training room, a D- in treatment of families, an F in team travel. And then you have the coaching staff evaluations. Offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, special teams coordinator. The head coach, Mike Tomlin, got an A. And yet, Colin seems to blame Tomlin for a lot of these organizational shortcomings. That's a disconnect to me. The head coach can only do so much when the infrastructure itself is failing. The home game field also got poor marks, which I know was mainly due to the condition of the playing surface itself. People took issue with that, and understandably so. Honestly, I think it's a little bit indefensible at this point for any NFL team to not have straight A's across the board in these categories. We're talking about multi-billion-dollar organizations. The playing field itself, for example, should always be pristine. My dad, growing up, was really into baseball, and he would always talk in awe about how beautiful and perfect the baseball fields were for the players. He'd describe it as playing on a golf green. Immaculate, no bad hops, just perfection. And that's for 162 games a season. Baseball teams play over 80 home games a year, and the fields are still kept in immaculate condition. So the idea that an NFL team playing only 8 or 9 home games a year can't have a perfect playing surface is crazy to me. It's genuinely crazy. Then you have the weight room. The fact that any team wouldn't have all the latest, most state-of-the-art training equipment is baffling to me. I know there's a whole debate about whether you need all that fancy equipment to build strength and performance. I'm not going to get into that debate right now, but here's my stance. I still want it all. I want everything available. I want my players to have access to the best tools on the market. And the reality is, for a billionaire owner, this stuff is pocket change. It's absolutely nothing. The amount of money these franchises generate is staggering. The allocated budget for upgrading a weight room or a dining facility is a rounding error on their balance sheets. Your weight room should be so impressive that your players actually want to live in there. It should be a destination, not a dungeon. And that brings me back to the food and dining area. It should be absolutely top tier, through the roof perfection. These are professional athletes. Their bodies are their livelihoods. Giving them access to world-class nutrition is not a luxury. It's a necessity. It's an investment in their performance and their health. Some of these things, relatively speaking, do not cost that much money in the grand scheme of an NFL operation. Now, I'll admit, I'm a little more open to some nuance when it comes to things like team travel. I'm not saying I would accept a low grade in that category either, but I'm curious about the criteria. What separates an A from an F in team travel? Is it the age of the planes, the legroom, the food served on board? I don't have the answers to that, so I'd want to dig deeper before commenting. But the low-hanging fruit, the weight room, the training room, the food and dining area, the treatment of families, that should all be automatic perfection. The treatment of families especially should be a no-brainer. Every single family member should be treated like they're Taylor Swift, or Brittany Mahomes, or Haley Steinfeld. I can never remember the names of the players' wives, honestly, but you get the point. They should all be treated like superstars. All of them. Because it's not really about the material things they're asking for. It's about the energy. It's about how things are handled. It's about the service provided to make their lives easier while their husbands or wives are focused on their jobs. It's about making them feel like a valued part of the organization, not an afterthought. Which makes me wonder, do the Steelers just not do anything in this regard? Is their approach essentially, here are the tickets, here's a room assignment, you guys figure everything out on your own? Do they just point them to a room with a bag of Doritos and say, good luck? Is there no concierge service, no one to help them navigate game day? Again, I'm not a family member of a professional athlete, so I don't know exactly what the Steelers are or aren't doing. But to me, some of this stuff is incredibly straightforward. It's basic hospitality. This is also where you see how some of these owners are just completely out of touch. They're wonky and delusional. Remember the Jets owner last year pushing back against these report cards, claiming some of the information was wrong or manipulated. He basically said he didn't believe the players' own feedback. And I'm sitting there thinking, if you don't want to agree with the very players you employ, that's on you. But it speaks to a larger issue. I had a take last season, and it still stands. If I were an owner, I would look at this report card and immediately start fixing everything. My goal would be to have straight A's across the board within a year. I would fix every single category, and then I would sit down with my players and say, all right, guys, tell me exactly what you want. Tell me how I can get A's on all of this. What do you need? What do your families need? And I'm going to do everything in my power to make it happen. I'm not guaranteeing I can do it all, but I'm certainly going to try. Anything within the realm of possibility, I'm doing it. These decisions are absolute no-brainers. They're bona fide, undeniable improvements that any competent owner should make without hesitation. But the wealthier these guys get and the more power they accumulate, the more disconnected from reality they become. You see this phenomenon everywhere. You see it with celebrities, with executives, with anyone who rises to the top of their field. I'm reminded of the creators of South Park, Trey Parker, and Matt Stone. They've talked about how, when they were younger and just starting out, they viewed life through a very specific, grounded lens. Then they became mega wealthy. Combined, they're worth something like $1 billion. And they joke now about how they'll look at an airline's first-class cabin and say, "Can you believe this passes for first class?" Their entire worldview has been transformed. They've become so accustomed to luxury that their baseline for normal has shifted dramatically. It's the same with these players. A lot of them are making tens of millions of dollars. Even the ones who aren't superstars are making life-changing money. And as they get more comfortable, their expectations rise. That's natural. But the owners? They're even further removed. They're often in their 60s, 70s, or 80s, and they're just getting older and more disconnected from the everyday realities of their players. Add being a billionaire on top of that, and the gap becomes a chasm. I look at my own parents as they've gotten older. Life is harder for them now. There are daily challenges and frustrations that just wear on them. Now imagine my dad had $1 billion. So many of the problems he deals with would just vanish. Not only are you already detached from the average person's reality because of your age, but you add literal hundreds of millions of dollars to the mix, and the disconnection becomes almost incomprehensible. It's just so far beyond what most people can relate to. Now, to be fair, it's not purely an age thing. There are plenty of younger owners who aren't great either. But age can certainly exacerbate the problem. And it also depends on whether you earned your money or inherited it. If you were essentially born into wealth and handed a franchise, your perspective is going to be completely different from someone who built their fortune from the ground up. I could go on and on about that, but those are separate conversations for another day. The moral of the story is this: the Pittsburgh Steelers and any other franchise with poor grades need to do better. Some of these low scores are just downright indefensible. If you're the owner, or if you're part of the decision-making hierarchy, you should see a report card like this and be haunted by it. You should immediately start making a list. Treatment of families? Fix it. Home field conditions? Fix it. Locker room? Fix it. Training room? Fix it. What changes do we need to make? And you should make them immediately. I would grab 15 players, the ones I trust the most, the ones I have established relationships with, the ones who will give me honest, grounded, realistic feedback, and I would sit down with them. I'd have a conversation and ask, what do we need to do? What do you guys want? What gets all these grades to A's? And here's the thing. Most of this can be resolved within the next 2 months. The weight room is a B. Literally by next week, you could turn it into an A. Food and dining area is a B-. By next week, you could turn it into an A. The locker room might require some renovation, maybe a month or so. But these are not multi-year projects. You can do this stuff seemingly overnight once you know what the problems are. And coming up with the solutions, that's the easy part. It's incredibly straightforward. But those are just my thoughts. I'd absolutely love to hear yours. What do you guys all think? Do you believe the Pittsburgh Steelers are still an elite franchise, or are these grades a sign of deeper issues? Let me know your thoughts. I read every single comment. So, whether you agree with me or disagree, either way, let's get some discussions going. Let's have some debates. But ultimately, let's just have some fun with it. And please do consider subscribing to the channel. We're building an amazing community here, and I would absolutely love to see you be a part of it. I want to build something we all genuinely feel connected to, something we're really excited to be a part of. I think we're well on our way to doing that. Please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up. It really does help with the visibility and the algorithm. Thank you so much. See you next time.